And I have worked with clients who are on SSRIs and have experimented with the microdosing. But you really have to make sure you're not experiencing any of those mental health conditions. Your family doesn't have any of those in your history. No lithium medication, no pregnancy. And then from there, we would explore, okay, how can you get it? And then what's the right protocol to start, and so on and so forth. But it is important that those boxes are checked first.
Mm, mm, mm. And I feel like definitely you said some words that I couldn't understand my first time hearing them actually. And I really, in terms of the way the episode is going, I'm learning new things as time goes. And I feel like that's what I wanted this episode to be. And also still on the conversation of finding joy in movement. So what are some common misconceptions about fitness and nutrition that you encounter in your work? How do you address these misconceptions and encourage a more balanced approach?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of people, I've been working as a personal trainer, holistic health coach for 14 years now, which is quite scary. But I would say a common misconception is that you're either all in or you're all out. And I would say, if we're trying to make this a long-term sustainable habit that we're going to be implementing ideally for the rest of our lives, right? Because we want movement to be something that we're doing for the rest of our lives. And if that is something that we're looking for, then we need to also work in flexibility into our everyday lifestyle. And that means listening to your body. Sure, you want to push yourself. You want to make sure you're getting results and, you're getting the endorphin rush and you're going to the gym and you're making it worth your while. However, life happens, things are going to come up. People are going to get sick. Your family is going to fall ill. People are going to need you. Stuff's going to come up at work, and you're not always going to be able to follow your set schedule, whether it be, following your right macros, your calories, your workout program, getting your meditations in. It's not always going to go the way you think it's going to go.
Mhm.
And having that flexibility and ability to live and thrive in that gray area is what I have seen makes my most successful clients be the most successful. Forgiving yourself, having that flexibility to say, okay, today's just not my day. Or, you know what? I got to go pick up the kids early from school. I'm not going to get this workout in, but maybe I'll get a 10-minute stretch session later in. Or maybe I'm going to go for a walk instead of going to the gym after I put the kids down, or whatever it is. And knowing that it's okay missing 1 or 2 days of the gym or having 1 or 2 more meals out a week with your friends or your family is not going to derail progress in the long run. What matters is that you get back on the horse the following day or as soon as you can, and you get right back to it, right? It's the habit of showing up for yourself consistently that really matters. And we don't have to live in this black or white kind of way of thinking. And having more of a flexible approach to health and wellness, I think, is what really makes the successful people be the most successful.
Mm. I loved what you just said, the habit of showing up for yourself. It's something that we actually don't usually do for ourselves, and we don't actually understand how important it is to our own self-esteem and also for our own mental well-being. And still in the conversation of fitness, it was my first time lifting weights, and it's something that I didn't do at first, and I was a bit skeptical because of the fact that the weights were too heavy for me and I couldn't understand it. So I said as I went on and on and on, I realized that this thing is it's really helpful in terms of being able to be in the gym and not thinking about my problems, being taking care of my mental health as a whole. So, how can people who are new to exercises or who have negative association with movement find a way to start enjoying physical activity?
Yeah, sure. It's really intimidating, right? Like showing up to a gym can be really intimidating, especially if you don't know what to do. You're not familiar with weight training, and it's scary. You feel like everyone's eyes are on you. So my suggestion is to start slow. And even if that is starting in your own living room, buying a yoga mat. You don't even need a yoga mat. There's a lot of things you can do with just your body weight. And I would say, start from where you currently are at. So if you're somebody who is not working out at all and you're terrified of going to the gym, maybe you're implementing 1 or 2 days a week at home for 20 minutes. And it's a body weight workout. There are tons of things you could do on YouTube now. You can get in contact with me. I have a ton of body weight programs I'm happy to share. I have some free programs you can download. There are tons of assets you can get your hands on nowadays, but start small and meet yourself where you're at, and don't beat yourself up for being intimidated, because every person who is great at what they do has once been a beginner. And it's so important to understand that and not judge yourself. So my advice is to meet yourself where you're at and start small with obtainable goals.
Mm. And I would like to move to your personal journey. You recently rebranded both your business and personal life. Can you share a story behind this decision and how it impacted your life?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so if I'm being honest, the reason for the name change was because originally I felt like my old company name, which was Body by Amanda, I started a long time ago when I was just doing personal training. And since then, I have felt like my brand has evolved. I am working with more of a holistic approach, not just in the physical form, but also with mental health, such as meditation, breath work, teaching people healthy habits, that don't have sometimes anything to do with the body. And then in the last 4 years, I've dove into plant medicine and working with people in that kind of a space. So I felt like my brand name, my company name, Body by Amanda, wasn't really encompassing all that I do. So I had inherently, I felt like I grew out of the name. Now, my last name was my family name, and I would have just made my company my old last name, Amanda Adele Wellness. Now, the problem with that is, we're on a podcast about trauma. So my experience with my father, it's been very broken, and he's been kind of the source of a lot of my trauma. And I actually, in the last 2 years, I've given him kind of like an opportunity to kind of prove himself in a way, or at least make an effort, I should say, because no one should try to prove anything to themselves. But as the father, you want, and as a child, you want them to kind of step up. And this is a man who has hurt me over and over again. And I kind of gave him one last chance because my brother had passed away, and I felt, empathy for him. I was like, this man just lost his only son. I'm going to give him another shot. Unfortunately, a series of events happened where I can't be associated with him anymore. And that's kind of come to fruition in the last year. And I was like, I can't take my last name and put it in lights. I just can't, because there's a liability, if you will, to be associated with him. I cannot be associated with him anymore from a personal standpoint, but also especially as a brand. So I said, I have to change my last name. And I went with a name that spoke to me, and I thought it would translate well into wellness, and I chose Heart. So here we are, Amanda Heart Wellness. And now my company name is essentially Heart Wellness. And I plan on just continuing to expand from there. But that's really the gist of it. Unfortunately, I just couldn't be associated with him anymore. And since then, to be honest, I have felt a weight just be lifted off my shoulders when I made that decision to finally be done with him, because for 37 years, I left the door open, and there was that back and forth and uncertainty. Like, should I have this relationship with this man who has done more harm than good, hardly any good? But because I'm a good person, I feel obligated because he's my family. But at the end of the day, it became very clear to me. I'm like, he's actually a dangerous human being, and I can't be associated with him. And since I've made that decision, my life has gotten a lot better. I feel like energy wise, I feel like I cut a cord. And since then, I have kind of spread my wings, and I've opened up, and I'm excited what the future holds for me and my new brand.
I feel like when it comes to brand changes, it shows the thing of new beginnings in terms of you're starting in a new path of yours. You will find healing, you will find success in terms of all of those things. And before we close off, I just want to ask two last questions. Firstly, you mentioned that you stopped. What is one book that has had a profound impact in your life?
So I used to read a lot of poetry growing up. And I know it sounds so silly, but in my very early teens, like 12, 13, 14, I actually loved Tupac. And he wrote this book. It was like a kind of like a memoir of all his lyrics. You know, he was a poet, and a lot of people don't
Yeah,
know that
yeah,
Tupac
yeah,
was a
yeah.
poet. One of the books I used to just always fall back on was A Rose That Grew from Concrete by, Tupac. It's his journal entries, and reading his entries and being inspired by him as somebody who, also grew up in poverty and came from nothing, and seeing how his successes were, and how much of a prominent voice he was in his community. It just inspired me. And I loved his writing, and I loved the rawness of it. So that was a big book for me. I still have it to this day. So Tupac Shakur, A Rose That Grew from Concrete. But also later on, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. That's a great one.
Mm. And Tupac influenced a lot of people, and in terms of raps, because I believed it was not only just true for the sales, but just to connect with people in terms of one of I couldn't relate in terms of Tupac because during that time I wasn't even born. So, but there's this one song I love about that I love. It's Dear Mama, and one of their biggest songs. And just Tupac is just was a wonderful person, wonderful rapper, and yeah, man. And
Oh.
also before we close up, I'm saying that I do a lot of time. What is one piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Would say just believe in yourself and don't give up, because there have been times where I felt like no one believed in me, and I wanted to give up because the future looked just very gloomy. And, the first thing I remember my mother saying when I told her I wanted to go to college was she laughed at me. She kind of scoffed at me. She said, "Huh, good luck paying for that." So even when it feels like there is no way out, if there is a will, there is a way. And if I made it, so can you. So when all else feels dark and like you're not going to get out, just don't give up. Just keep going.
Mm, mm, mm. Such touching words, and I feel like at some point, actually not at some point, there are times that I feel like that of not thinking that I won't make it, for and not knowing, having that thing of there are no people that are supporting me. But what what this was just you said, if there's a will, there's a way, and it's really, in a way, it motivated me a bit. And also thank you so much for that. And that's the end of our show, so I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your thank you for your time firstly, and thank you for sharing this knowledge. And definitely I've learned a lot from today's episode,